Luz y progreso, paz y justicia. This is your host, Sancista BRUJO Luis. So this video goes out to all my spiritual followers. Have you ever felt like spiritually you failed either a client or a friend or someone that came to you looking for spiritual help or guidance? Have you ever felt like you failed someone? And this is something that personally happened to me this past weekend. So let me start the video from the beginning. When I was little, my spiritual elders, mis padrinos espirituales, mi abuelita, my grandparents, mis tías, mis tíos, mi mamá, they all taught me that when someone asks for la caridad, if someone asks for the works of charity, and they ask you for a moment, can you bless me? Can you pray for me? You stop everything and you bless that person or you pray for that person. And this situation happened to me this weekend and I failed. You know, in Espiritismo we often say, si a tu puerta llega un ser pidiendo la caridad, no se la niegues, hermano, que Dios te lo pagará. So let me start from this situation. This past Saturday, a fellow TikToker, he is an espiritista, he's a Puerto Rican espiritista, he's a santero, and he is a palero. He called me this Saturday morning and he said, Don Luis, Sancista Luis, can you pray for me? Can you take a moment and pray for me? Now, although I have no excuses, at that moment when he had called, his name is Carlos Grandpa, and you can see him on his TikTok channel. He used to speak on spiritual things, and now he speaks on dialysis on his video. But at that moment when he had called, I was walking my dogs. It was early in the morning, and then after I was going to walk my dogs, I was going to take my mother to the stores, and then we were going to do dinner. That's no excuse, but still I said to Don Carlos, I said, Don Carlos, do you mind if I call you this evening? Because right now I'm walking my dogs, and after that I'm taking my mother, to the stores, and then we're gonna go out to dinner. And he said, no, of course, you go do what you have to do with your mother and call me later. And I said, okay, I will call you back later. So finally the day passed. I had, did what I did with my mom, and I got home that night. And I was a little bit tired, and then a little late in the night I remembered Don Carlos Grandpa, and I said, oh my God, let me give him a call. So I called his phone number and there was no answer. So I said, okay, maybe he's sleeping. I'll check up on him tomorrow morning. So the following morning, I wake up, I get out of bed, I have my coffee, and I turn on my social media. And the first thing I see is a message from someone saying, pray for Carlos Grandpa, he is in ICU. And you can imagine how I felt at that moment. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie The Sixth Sense. In the beginning, when the patient is in the doctor's house and the patient screamed at him, you failed me, you failed me. That's how I felt. I felt like, oh my God, I failed this man. And Don Carlos Grandpa was asking for a prayer at that moment, and I was busy with my life and I couldn't. We were taught in Espiritismo that when someone asks for a prayer, someone asks you for blessings, you give it de la caridad, you give it from the heart. God gave you the ability, the dones, the gift to pray and to bless for free, and you give that for free. And you should stop whatever you're doing at whatever moment and you bless that person or you pray for that person. And I had forgotten that for a second, so you can imagine how I felt. So finally today, I called Don Carlos. I finally got in contact with Carlos Grandpa, and he was on the phone, and we spoke, and I apologized. I said, I'm so sorry. What had happened is when he had called me for a prayer, and I told him I couldn't do it, he hung up, and then 30 minutes later, after our conversation, his body went into shock and he had to be brought into the hospital in an emergency. So he explained that to me and I felt so bad. And I said, brother, I'm so sorry. I failed you. I failed my espíritus. I failed my grandmother. And he said, hermano, brother, don't worry about it. At least you're checking up on me now. At least you're talking to me. And at least I'm still alive to be able to, have this conversation with you. And I said, can I pray for you now, hermano? And he said, yes, I'm in my hospital bed, and I would love that. So God gave me the opportunity to pray for him. But remember, if someone asks you for a blessing, for a prayer, no matter what you're doing, you stop for a second, you sit down, and you pray for that person. That's what an espiritista is. That is what is a curandero, a hierbero, a santiguador, a brujo, a bruja. You know, take that moment to una mediunidad. Take that moment to stop what you're doing, the whole world, because this person is asking you para la caridad. Pray for them and bless them. And so I'm going to dedicate this prayer in Spanish para Don Carlos del Corazón. I'm just going to say what feels from my heart. I prayed for him, and so I'm going to do it on social media. And this is for you, Carlos Grandpa from Sancista BRUJO Luis. Padre celestial y Madre de la tierra, Padre del cielo, Padre celestial y Madre de la tierra, en este momento cojo un momento de mi día para orar en el nombre, el cuerpo, el alma y el espíritu de Carlos Grandpa. Padre celestial, que tú sabes que en este momento Carlos Grandpa se encuentra en una situación que está en el hospital. Te pido, Padre celestial, que tú derrames tu fluido curativo en su cuerpo, en su alma, en su espíritu material y espiritual a Carlos Grandpa. Darle la fuerza, Padre celestial, y el entendimiento de que todo lo que tú haces, tú lo haces con un propósito. Padre, hágalo aceptar esa enfermedad que tú le has mandado. Padre celestial, te pido que le dé el conocimiento a Carlos Grandpa de aceptar esta prueba material que tú le has mandado a su cuerpo espiritual, a su cuerpo físico. Padre celestial, mándale su ángel de la guarda, sus seres, sus guías, sus protectores, su cuadro espiritual que esté en ese momento con Carlos Grandpa, derramando su fluido curativo, los espíritus curativos, para que le den la fuerza y el entendimiento para sanarse. Padre celestial, dale otra oportunidad a Carlos Grandpa, dale la fuerza físicamente, materialmente, emocionalmente, para aceptar esto que tú le has dado. Padre celestial, te lo pido con todo corazón. Y esto yo lo hago en el honor a Carlos Grandpa. So I just want to end the video that we're living in a society where people are asking for prayers and blessings and people are charging. This is not what we do. As an espiritista, as a mediunidad, we are taught in our Latino culture that if you go to someone and you ask para la bendición, te lo bendicen de todo corazón. God gave you those fluidos. God gave you those dones, those spiritual gifts, and he gave those spiritual gifts to you for free, and you give that blessing for free. You give those prayers for free, right? And so when someone asks you for a blessing and someone asks you for a prayer, you stop the whole world and you give them that prayer. You give them that blessings. And even myself, that have been living and doing this for so many years, I forgot. And so this was a lesson, not just for Carlos Grandpa, I'm sure, but also for me to remember that I was taught these things as little, right? And everything has su orden. And again, if someone asks you for a prayer, una bendición, una oración, una bendición, un santiguo, you stop the world and you bless them and you pray for them. So Carlos Grandpa, te quiero mucho, hermano. Que Dios te dé la fuerza, que Dios te dé el entendimiento para entender estas pruebas que tú estás pasando en estos momentos. Lo quiero mucho de todo corazón, hermano. Tenga fe y mantenga la cabeza para arriba, que tú vas a seguir para adelante. Sancista BRUJO Luis. Chao.